How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Why have they got you down as Bedale today?
Right, because that's actually, I live just south of Bedale. Business is at first, because that's why I'm usually there. That's why I'm usually there.
So you're at home in Bedale as opposed to at work in Thirsk. This is
I'm not working at home in Bedale.
This is bespoke.
I'm waiting for the 8th of March.
This is bespoke radio presenting. I have a personal interest that I take. Where are we? What's going on with the borders? Where are the quarantine hotels? And
Okay, so this time last year we spoke about emergency planning,
yes,
and I had a certain sense of confidence that there would be plans.
Good grief.
In fact, a radio station was listening to your show, called me up and asked me to do it for them later.
Is that right? Could you just tell my listeners who aren't paying attention, for example, Keith, what you used to do for a living?
I used to be the Deputy Chief Constable of North Yorkshire.
So you know of what you speak?
I genuinely thought, because, well, it's around the exercise and all those sort of things, and I genuinely thought that they would say, right, we've got this respiratory disease, and so we need to be thinking about ventilators and what can happen next and what can happen next. There's a question that is attributed to Admiral Yamamoto at the Pearl Harbor briefing of the Naval High Command, the Japanese Naval High Command. They said this will give us naval control of the Pacific for 18 months. And Admiral Yamamoto is said to have replied, what happens next? And that's the question you've got to keep asking during the course of this. And the bit that I said to your colleague, Keith, I'm almost speechless today that they haven't got hotels lined up in case they have to push the button marked quarantine.
Well, they've only had a year.
Exactly. That I have desperately, because I pay a direct debit to this lot, I have desperately tried not to be the Harry Enfield character who sticks his head up above the fence and says, I wouldn't do it that way, I'll do it a different way.
You should have done it like that.
And yet, time after time, you get to the next stage in the process and it comes as a great big surprise, whether it's school meals or whether it's, testing and the tracking of people. We're going to need people to call around to people's houses. People are self-isolating. We need people to go and make sure
they're not, as Dido Harding revealed yesterday. Before claiming
nobody's going around to ask them.
20,000 people not self-isolated. Of course, nobody could have known that this virus was going to mutate. Bless her.
But I think be just a little bit careful about the mutation thing.
Yes.
Because I read Times, and I think perhaps in something else good, just recently, that the virus will mutate even amongst our own population. So, yes, the South Africa thing, but actually we're quite capable of mutating.
So you mean even if we keep, well, we did, didn't we? We cultivated the so-called Kent mutation. So even if we keep, but they're not popping up at a rate of knots yet. So I mean, we're better off keeping people out, particularly from countries where the new mutations already are. But of course it doesn't, as you quite rightly remind us, it doesn't prevent mutations from occurring independently witin these islands.
The bit that's irritating and I think makes one's confidence wane, and that's the bit, we've got to have confidence in the leadership, and the bit that is making confidence wane is, this is going to change and vary and all of that, we've got to live with that, but the bit is, this business of not, apparently not being able to join the dots between saying something, we're going to do this, and we're going to announce it then, and then suddenly you discover, and you've played the clip, I heard it on that programme myself, where it's saying, nobody's spoken to us. This is just not good enough.
I don't want to sound as if I'm maligning any of my other callers, but there is a weight to your words, Peter, as a result of your very, very high rank, almost the highest rank at which you ended up, and you would have had responsibility for managing crises of a very different sort and a very different flavour. And I mean, unlike perhaps the people who are more performative in their contributions, like for example Gobs on Sticks and radio presenters, that there is a genuine sense of wonder behind what you're saying. You actually can't believe what you're seeing. Am I right?
There's parts of it that I am finding truly astonishing. For example, we've spoken about the Great Heck Rail crash.
Yes.
Okay, on that day, we had a plan. We had a significant number, unfortunately, of people who died.
Yes.
And under those circumstances, you have to take them to a temporary mortuary.
Right.
And I had to explain that at some length to the coroner,
Yes.
who wanted them to go to York Hospital. And I said, you can't do that. There isn't enough room. You know, and it is literally that sort of thing. You have the plan, you deal with the plan, and it's all worked out, and you've exercised it. And since I discovered there's another thing as well. We've been a bit like Singapore, that had, you remember, they had all the guns pointing in the wrong direction. We were prepared for a an influenza pandemic, and we don't seem to have been prepared or responded to this as a respiratory syndrome pandemic.
Okay.
And that, I think, started us off poorly, but then people pretending everything's wonderful when it's not does not help your decision making as you go forward. And we did too much of that in the beginning.
And if I were to nudge you into territory where you're less comfortable and ask you to speculate, why do you think we have gone from? Why have we gone from a position that you presumed confidence in, because your experience and your understanding of issues led you to conclude that they must actually have a handle on it somehow and somewhere, and now you've ended up 10 months later observing the reality, the observable reality of this absolute plan, with Downing Street saying yesterday that Matt Hancock would announce something today that the vaccines minister has now said no, we won't, and the people he was going to be talking about have said we haven't heard hide nor hair from him for weeks. How do you look out for it?
My comment would be informed by, why isn't somebody asking the question, why didn't we...
That's not an answer. I want, why, how do you think, or why do you think they're still pressing on with? Why are we still being told on a Wednesday that we're going to hear from a minister on a Thursday, but actually later on Thursday it turns out we're not? And the hoteliers know nothing about the plan for the quarantine hotels that Matt Hancock was supposed to announce today. What's happened, do you think? Put your detective hat back on rather than your deputy chief constable hat, and tell me what the motive is. What's the motive, Peter? It's all about, I've been watching a lot of Vera. What's the motive?
I simply cannot. It is due to an absence of talent. I find that hard. Because I know Rishi, for obvious reasons. I know Rishi. He's largely done things right, and he's done a hell of a lot outside of the normal party comfort zone in terms of spending. There's a bit there when you just think, how, with this complete absence of talent, the position where they are. And, you know, the Yorkshire Post frequently, and I find it, you know, I find their analysis to appear accurate.
Yes, the Yorkshire Post is perhaps reminding some of the national newspapers what proper journalism looks like, or indeed what speaking truth to power looks like. So in the absence of any other explanation, Peter, we're left with this text that came in at 10:28, and I don't think it describes you, but how are they getting away? I think you guys on the left hate the fact that he seems to be getting away with it. Long may it continue. Until people care about being...
Remind you, James, remind your texter what I said earlier. I pay a direct debit to this lot. I'm a member of their party.
There you go.
I am disappointed at the performance of some of the ministerial team. I think vaccinations is a standout success. I think what Rishi has done has largely been very successful. I think they've just not seen what's coming. And friends of mine who are members of Parliament, one in particular, have voiced similar things. I can't name names.
No, of course you can't. No, nor would I expect you to.
And nor am I spinning your yarn. I'm not that sort of person.
No, I know.
We really do need to get a proper grip on all of the issues to do with this.
And if we don't, more people will die. More people will die. I mean, that's the astonishing thing, is that this is about avoidable deaths. It's not about flipping culture wars or statues or Chaucer or diversity appearing on Britain's Got Talent or Captain Tom or anything. It's about avoidable deaths. And there is a card-carrying member of the Conservative Party who rose to one of the highest ranks in the British police force, sharing my profound, heartbreaking misgivings about why the government is apparently treating the concept of quarantine, the competence and all of the clarity